Imagine a story that doesn't begin with a throne, armies, or grand empires, but with a solitary man leaving his homeland in Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq. A man bearing a mysterious promise that he would become the father of a nation whose influence would spread across the globe. Would you believe it? This man is Abraham, who left behind all that was familiar, guided only by a promise from God. Through his obedience, the Jewish people came into being, not through power or conquest, but through a deep connection formed by a covenant powerful enough to shape the course of human history. Today, we will turn back time to discover the origins of the Jewish people, uncovering rich details preserved in ancient books like Jubilees. These texts reveal a multi-layered story, a faith that has endured countless empires, dynasties, and millennia. And as our journey ends, we will see how Abraham's covenant, first forged in Mesopotamia, continues to resonate to this day, deeply rooted in the identity and mission of this people. So, if you are ready, join us in exploring these truths. This is the story of a promise that has traveled through time, connecting ancient history to the modern world and leaving an indelible mark. In the ancient city of Ur, among towering temples and statues of gods, Abraham, then known as Abram, lived. This was not a place for worshipping an invisible God. Abraham grew up surrounded by gods revered through complex rituals, powerful statues, and a polytheistic culture passed down for generations. Ur, now located in Iraq, was a land steeped in polytheism, where gods were represented through symbols of authority and rituals. Yet amid this backdrop, Abram heard a voice unlike any he had known. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation and will bless you." Imagine the faith it took for Abram to leave behind all that was familiar, family, culture, and his father's gods, to venture into the unknown. Abram had no map or specific destination, only a promise. Each step he took was a step into the invisible, guided by his unwavering faith in the word of God. This promise was that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars, and through him all families of the earth would be blessed. This moment marked not only the beginning of Abram's journey, but the birth of the Jewish people, a destined lineage that would change the world. Abraham's rejection of idols was not just a personal choice, it was a rebellion against the cultural norms of his time. The ancient book of Jubilees tells that he shattered his father's idols, symbolizing his rejection of the gods of Mesopotamian culture. This act marked Abraham as the first Hebrew, the one who crosses over to serve the one true God. To confirm his promise, God gave Abraham a sign, a ritual of circumcision that would forever distinguish his descendants. This was not merely an outward sign, but a declaration that Abraham's lineage would be a covenant people, chosen to honor God. With this sign, Abraham's role as the father of a nation was firmly established. His obedience would echo through generations, beginning a lineage bound to God's promise and chosen as his people. The journey of faith begun by Abraham was carried forward by his son, Isaac. Unlike his father, Isaac led a quieter life, steadfast in the promise, but more rooted than the grand journeys of his father. Through Isaac, the continuity of the covenant was evident as God reaffirmed the promise, telling Isaac that he would fulfill the oath he made to Abraham, Isaac's father. Isaac's role was crucial, for he bridged the past to the future, holding fast to the promise to ensure it would be passed on to his descendants. It was Jacob, Isaac's son, who would take the covenant to a new level. Jacob's story is one of struggle, transformation, and revelation. In a defining moment, he wrestled with a mysterious figure throughout the night, symbolizing both the pain and strength of his journey. As dawn broke, the figure blessed Jacob with a new name, Israel, meaning one who struggles with God. This name was not only for Jacob, but for all his descendants, a people who would wrestle with faith yet remain loyal to God. Among Jacob's sons, Joseph stood out, a beloved son who would play a crucial role in preserving the promise during a dark period for his family. Joseph's story is one of incredible highs and devastating lows. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and taken to Egypt, his life seemed destined for despair. Yet through dreams and his gift for interpretation, Joseph rose to a position of power, second only to Pharaoh. When famine struck, Joseph's wisdom not only saved Egypt, but also provided refuge for his family. However, this sanctuary would later become a place of bondage for his descendants, as a new Pharaoh rose to power, one who did not remember Joseph. Fearing the growth and strength of the Israelites, Pharaoh enslaved them, forcing them into bitter labor. The Book of Jubilees suggests that this period of oppression was a divine test, forging a people who would rely solely on God's promise. Imagine the suffering, the cries of an oppressed people who once knew favor in this land. This was the first collective trial for the Jewish people, a period that would cement their identity as a resilient people. Holding on to hope amidst suffering and clinging to God's covenant, God heard the cries of his people, and their story of deliverance began with a man raised in the palace of their oppressor, Moses. A Jew by birth, but raised as an Egyptian prince, Moses became a beacon of hope for his people. His encounter with God in the burning bush marked the beginning of an incredible, almost unimaginable journey to lead his people out of bondage. God told Moses, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt, and I have come down to deliver them." Moses returned to Egypt, confronted Pharaoh, and spoke the words of God, "Let my people go." But freedom was not easily won. Each time Pharaoh refused, a new plague struck Egypt, each one further proving God's power and his unbreakable commitment to his people. From disease to locusts, darkness covering the land, and finally the death of every firstborn Egyptian, the plagues were a powerful reminder of God's promise and his protection over his people. Finally, Pharaoh relented and the Israelites left Egypt. They did not leave just with freedom, but with an unwavering belief that Abraham's covenant remained intact. However, their journey to freedom was not yet over. At the Red Sea, they faced yet another trial, with the Egyptian army pursuing them from behind. When Moses raised his hand, the sea parted before the people, revealing a dry path through towering walls of water. This was not merely a natural miracle, but a powerful symbol of liberation, of the covenant that had carried them through hardship. The pinnacle of this journey came at Mount Sinai, where God gave the Israelites the law, binding them to a new covenant. This law, including the Ten Commandments, became the foundation of their identity, setting them apart as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. In the wilderness, amid trials and temptations, they learned the importance of perseverance and loyalty to God. Their journey was not merely about reaching a promised land, but about becoming a people with a unique purpose, a people who would carry the name of Israel and bear both the blessings and burdens of the covenant. When the wandering ended, the Israelites finally entered Canaan under Joshua's leadership. They conquered and settled in this land, living under the guidance of judges until they desired a king. God granted their request, and Saul became Israel's first king. But it was David, a shepherd with a heart for God, who united the tribes and established Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Under David's son Solomon, the first temple was built, becoming the spiritual heart of the Jewish nation, a place where God's presence dwelled among them. The temple symbolized their covenant, a place where sacrifices and worship were central to their identity as a people set apart for God. After Solomon's death, the kingdom was divided into Israel and Judah, weakening the nation and leading to its eventual downfall. First, the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom, scattering its tribes. And later, Judah fell to Babylon, leading to the destruction of the temple and a period of exile. Even in exile, the Jewish people held firmly to their identity. They clung to the Torah, upheld their traditions, and held on to the promise God made to Abraham. Despite being far from their homeland and without a temple, their faith endured. After 70 years, the exiles were allowed to return to Jerusalem, where they rebuilt the temple and restored their community. The Second Temple period was marked by spiritual revival, but it also brought challenges from foreign influences. The Greek culture, steeped in human philosophy, threatened to erode their identity. Yet, the Jewish people resisted, standing firm in their covenant even as the world around them sought to change them. During this period, ancient texts like Enoch warned against the dangers of cultural assimilation, urging the Jewish people to hold fast to divine wisdom over human philosophies. Faced with increasing pressure to assimilate into Greek culture, the Jewish people faced a turning point. Their defiance culminated in the Maccabean Revolt, a powerful testament to their resilience and dedication to their covenant. The Maccabean Revolt reclaimed the temple from Greek control and rededicated it, a victory celebrated annually in Hanukkah. This moment highlighted their unbreakable will to preserve their beliefs and traditions. They did not only reclaim a physical space, but reaffirmed the foundation of their faith and identity. But the trials did not end there. When the Roman Empire took control of Judea, tensions rose again. Under Roman rule, the Jewish people faced brutal oppression, leading to internal divisions. Groups like the Sadducees, Pharisees, Zealots, and Essenes emerged, each interpreting the covenant differently, yet all striving for freedom and redemption. In 70 CE, the Second Temple, the spiritual center of Jewish life, was destroyed by the Romans, and the Jewish people were scattered across the Roman Empire, beginning the diaspora. This event could have marked the end of Jewish identity, yet it became a profound moment of resilience. With no central place of worship, they turned to the Torah and established synagogues and study centers as new spiritual hubs. Teachings from the Talmud preserved their faith, ethics, and laws, allowing them to endure and adapt through centuries of hardship. Through each generation, they redefined their identity, refusing to be shaped by circumstances and staying true to the promise God had made to their ancestors. Despite centuries of persecution and exile, the Jewish people's unwavering faith remained. Their trials in the diaspora became integral to their identity. Ancient texts like Enoch and Jubilees portray this journey as part of a divine plan, viewing each hardship as a test of faith, preparing them for their unique role in God's kingdom. Finally, in 1948, after centuries of wandering, the Jewish people established the modern state of Israel, reviving the Hebrew language and returning to their ancestral homeland. This was not only the restoration of a land, but of an identity, a place where they could hold fast to their covenant, worship freely, and build a future rooted in God's promise. Yet their journey continues, challenging the world to consider the meaning of faith resilience, and divine purpose. The story of the Jewish people, from Abraham to today, is an epic of unwavering faith, relentless endurance, and a covenant unbroken by time or trial. It is a story that calls each of us to ask, what does it mean to be part of something greater, something eternal? And what is the power of a promise that can endure for millennia?